I don't have any claret hackle, but other than that, this fly is as close as I can get it to the original Joe Messenger Sr. Irresistible. I'm tying it on a number 14 fine wire hook with black thread. The bare shank does make it a little bit more difficult to tie things in, but I want it bare so that I can spin the body hair. I do have a pinch of deer hair that I'm using for the tail, tying it in loosely at first and then tightening up as I wrap forward. The loose wraps at the tail end keep it from flaring, and then you can see that as I have cinched down on that hair, it flares. So I want the tail not to flare. Cut out the butt ends, and then I'll just hang on to that so that it doesn't spin or move, and wrap down tight on those ends, and then bring my thread loosely back to the back. This is a good fly to practice thread control with. The Irresistible has a clipped deer hair body, so I'm going to start with some white, clean out the butt ends. I've kind of figured out how to clip that with my left hand if I put the scissors on the other direction. Now hold that over the end of the hook. I'm going to do an easy wrap, and then I want this to spin, but just down to the underside. I don't want it to spin all the way around. So what I am creating is a bicolor body with white on the bottom and then a darker hair on the top. And I'm taking just small pinches, and I think that 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top is going to be plenty on this number 14 hook. So fan it out, clean out the bottom, clip off the tips just so that they're not in the way when I cut it all apart. Trim it. So I want this then to stay on top. I am using a technique from Mike George and hair stacking to get the color separations, the white on the bottom and the darker on top. I'll bring it forward. I am going to push it together a little bit, and I don't want more than half of the hook shank covered for the body, because I do have a wing and hackle that I need to tie in. Take another little bit of white, clean that out. Clip it off, blow away all the stuff, set that on top of my shank, do an easy wrap, a second easy wrap, and then let it curl down underneath and cinch down on it from underneath. Putting my finger or thumb on top while I cinch and pull my thread up is going to help to keep it on the bottom. I'll wait to bring that thread up until I put another little bit. So another little bit of the darker. I tried to use even a darker deer. I have some hair from the shoulder of this same animal, and it does not flare. Shoulder, the back of the neck is actually where it came from. This is, the white is obviously the belly hair, and the tan is side body hair. So then I'll lay that on top, bring my thread up, and then hold on to it while I cinch it down. And 2 wraps is plenty. Make sure that it doesn't spin. And here's a major problem with using a finer thread. I just broke my thread. I had the tension set too tight on my bobbin. I'm going to try to save it. And I think I can. I think I can. Probably should be using, I don't think this is a GSP thread. And I don't have any fine black GSP. Bring my thread up in front. I'm going to use a pen and just push back on that to kind of clean it up and get that shank bare. And I really am looking for about half of the shank to still be bare. And I'll go ahead and put a whip fin or a half hitch, and then I'm going to do a double half hitch because I'm going to cut out my thread before I do the clipping. Just push my scissors up against the thread and push. Then I'm going to give this a haircut without cutting out the tail. Shape the body. It's just kind of a little bullet shape. I want a straight front on it and a bullet-shaped body, and only cut out the hair that I spun. And I've got a fairly okay light bottom and darker top. And then just carefully put my scissors in here at the back and only cut out the blunt tips or the blunt ends that are the spun hair. I did put in a little bit heavier tail just to make sure that if I end up cutting out some of the tail, I still have plenty of tail left over. Because it's pretty easy to nip some of the tail fibers. looking fairly good. I still have a few of those blunt fibers here, blunt hairs. They're pretty distinguishable from the tail hair, so that's looking fairly good. I think I've got one or two more here maybe. Guess if I get a tail hair or two also, it's not going to be the end of the world. Alright, that looks fairly good. Flatten out the bottom a little bit. The deer hair will definitely help this fly to float. It is a dry fly. That means that it is supposed to float when fished. And this particular one made completely from deer. Yeah, I'm mostly happy with that. Just clean up the body a little bit, even it out. Got a little bit of extra black thread in there because of breaking my thread and needing to tie it back in, but I think we're all right with that. I have one more clump of hair. Grab it by the tips, fan it out, and clean out all the under stuff. Takes about half of what I have away, and I think that's going to be pretty good for the wing. I suspect that because the wing, tying in the wing is not an easy task with the deer, that it is one of the reasons why this fly is often tied with something other than deer for the wing. So I stacked my deer hair. I don't want my wing any longer than the body. I'm going to grab those tips and use my left-handed scissor technique, cutting from the top down, and clip off all the butt ends. And then I just realized that I forgot to tie my thread back in, so I'm going to have to carefully set that little bunch of hair aside. And I should have tied my thread back in before I did that stacking. It'll make it work. It'll make it work. I'm going to just set that over that spot. It does lean across onto the body a little bit. I'm going to do 2 easy wraps, holding it with my right hand and using the bobbin with the left. And then I'll come back in and tie up over that. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here, but not yet. What I want to do now is stand that wing up and tie underneath of it. That'll help it to keep from spinning. And then I need to divide it. So I'll just do a few stand-up wraps underneath. Then I'm going to take a pointed object. I actually use this pick most of the time instead of a bodkin, but a bodkin would work as well. And try to divide evenly. Then I'm going to just take my thread and wrap around the base of that front wing, just sort of loosely, just enough to identify and separate it out. If I wrap too tight, I would have a tendency to pull off. And then I'm just going to do a cross wrap that way, and then bring my thread around the other way in cross wrap, a couple of those, and then I'm going to wrap that circle wrap around that back wing, around the base of that back wing, grabbing a hold of it as I wrap to keep my thread wrapped around the bottom of it. And then I'll do a couple more cross wraps. That will help pull that back one forward a little bit. And then I'll pull back on all of it again and wrap around the front. So then I have the divided wings. And they are going to lean forward a little bit, but I will come in now and clip out those butt ends. And I don't have to clip them real short because they'll just kind of become one with the body. And any other of the hair that's out of place I can just clip out right now. But that looks okay. Divided wings. And the last piece is Hackle. And claret is not an easy color to come by. You pretty much have to dye it yourself or find somebody to dye it for you. So I'm just going to use a dark brown. This is actually, I think, a furnace hackle. The recipe that I'm using from The Founding Flies by Mike Valla says claret or dun, but it's tied with a variety of colors. So a few wraps behind the wings, then I'll pull up on the wings and get a wrap or two in front. Not a lot of wraps in front, but just to have a little bit of definition there. And then I'll catch that hackle feather in with 3 wraps over the top. And then I'll pull back on everything. Find just the head or the eye and wrap up underneath of that hackle. And then I'm going to clip it out. And because I've got a lot of hackle right up on the eye of this hook, I'm going to tie it off with 2 double half hitches on my pen half hitch tool. Maybe someday I'll invest, if I can even find one anymore, in one of those little brass half hitch tools, but the pen works fine for now. So 2 double half hitches. And just push my scissors against that thread right up underneath of the knot. Put a drop of diluted goop on that head. And I will pass a hackle feather through the eye of the hook just to make sure that it is tippet ready.